Okay, welcome everyone. This video is about content awareness. My name is Chris Trevino. I'm a security engineer with Checkpoint Software. This video was put together mainly because we did a training in Sacramento for customers, and we went over content awareness to give them a good overview of how it can work, how can you use it in your security rules, and then it's kind of a lot to go over just once. So as we put this video together so that you can be able to reference it, go back to it, see the examples, and then learn more about it. So let's get into it. So the agenda is we're going to do an introduction on content awareness. We're going to go over some use cases, and then what you want to keep in mind when you're working with content awareness, how to put it in your rules, go over a little bit of security layers, and then details about file and content types. So what is content awareness good for? It's really something that some people don't turn on. It is included in the gateway. It's not something you have to pay an extra license for. It's available with any NGTP license. But what do you really use it for? So you want to use it to learn about content, related traffic, and what's in your network. So once you turn on content awareness, you see what kind of content people are using. It will educate users on their behavior and enforce content-related sharing policies. So things as if you wanted to block alcohol or tobacco websites, things like that. If you want to block what people are going to, what they're using, and specific content within HTTP or within any other application, you can block that specifically. And maybe you don't want to block it, maybe you just want to log it. Maybe you want to see what people are doing, what type of traffic they're using. So the Content Awareness Blade provides those new capabilities of controlling file types, content types, and the direction. So anytime you turn on content awareness, just realize that you are dealing with direction is important because you have to do upload or download or both, whichever way. But you have to specify which direction to be able to analyze the content awareness. Analyze the content. And then you're matching the content for unified rule base within the matching process. And the content awareness engine is running in the kernel. So let's look at an example of content awareness, of utilizing content awareness here. So this content here, these rules say spreadsheet including credit card details. So under the content type, there's download traffic, and then there's spreadsheets including credit card details. So we're saying go ahead and accept that. The action is there. We're going to allow users through the web browsing to download traffic that has spreadsheets including credit card details. And then after that, we're going to block, or we're going to drop any other detail, any other spreadsheet files or any other type of files in any direction that have PCI credit card numbers in them. So maybe as a company, you have a policy that allows you to download spreadsheets, including credit card details in it, but you don't want any other type of credit card details to be transmitted anywhere else in any other files, because as a company, you only use spreadsheets to transfer numbers that look like credit card numbers. So here, what we're saying is we're going to allow those spreadsheets with credit card details to go through, but we're going to block any other credit card numbers in any direction, right? Upload or download. And then we're going to allow the rest of the documents and spreadsheets to be able to be allowed through so that we're not inhibiting the business. And we have extended logging turned on so we can see that when these are blocked, we can see which content it is. So remember when you're using content awareness that you were talking about file types, spreadsheet files, document files, those type of file types, content types, and then which is like credit card details, PCI credit card numbers. And there's a slide here that we're going to go over the default credit content types and what those are, and then direction, right? So we're going to do, even when we have any direction, we're dealing with a direction, and then we have download traffic, upload or download. So that's content awareness in a nutshell, and how you can set rules for it. So this is something we're going to continue to use and continue to see is the content types, file types, and directions. So you can see here that we're talking about the file types or content type. This is actually the content types. and then source, destination, protocol. So in the bug example, you see a larger rule base. You can see the direction, the data group type object. So this data type group object that we have here, this is actually custom built, and I'm going to show you how we can build those in the later slide. We can build our own content type. So if we want to see spreadsheet with credit card details, or if we want to see any type of file with any kind of content type, we can put those two together, and then that's how we create our own data group object. And then there's a content type object, which is PCI credit card numbers, and then file type objects, things like spreadsheet files. And the order of the rules, of course, is important because this is a top-down approach. So as it hits, you want you're more specific at the top if you're doing allows or denies, and then you're least specific below that, or even with your allows and denies. So you want to go more specific from top down. That way, if you have because as soon as the packet gets a hit, it's going to execute on that rule, and then it's not going to go to the next rule if it already hit that rule. So this is an example of a data type group object name that you can create yourself, and then you can create a file type. So we're saying spreadsheet files, and we're putting the file content as credit card numbers, and then we'll name this ourselves, the data group objects, and we'll call it spreadsheets including credit card numbers. And you want to make sure that this is as descriptive as possible, because you don't want to have to go back later when you're creating your rule base and then look within the data group type. What did I do that again? So if you called this like marketing rule, and then you have to remember what the marketing rule is, and then if you have another engineer, then he's going to go back and have to look up what that marketing rule is. So within the data type group objects, make sure you're utilizing the name to actually describe what's within this rule. And this example is going to be used again on the following slide. So remember that when using data group objects, the file types and the content types need to match in order for the group object. But this word right here that's in bold, and. So what we're saying is when we're creating this data type group, spreadsheet files and credit card numbers together includes this. So we're saying this is an and. So it's both of these together. If it's a spreadsheet file, it doesn't match this. If it's a PCI credit card numbers, it doesn't match. Only when it's a spreadsheet file that with credit card numbers does it match this data type group. Using the group concept improves the efficiency of the rule base. So as you're doing this, again, when you're creating your rules, it's a top-down approach. So you want to be most specific towards the top and then least specific as you go through. And whether you're doing permit or deny, you want to permit more specific and then less specific after. So creating your data type groups and then making them more specific and putting them towards the top, it becomes more efficient. So remember this example. So when we're going over content, define, these are the data types. So file types, I'm sure you know, spreadsheet files, document files, things like that. Data types within, so now you can see their certificate files, PCI credit card numbers, PGP private keys, and there's a longer list of these, but these are the type of things that you can look for. So if you want to look for HIPAA, if you're in medical field and you want to block HIPAA data to make sure it's not going out, but then you as a company, you utilize HIPAA data and you put them in Word documents and then you send those over to HR. So then you want to allow HIPAA data within Word documents to be sent from source of anyone to destination of HR. That's okay to be sent. And then you want to block all other HIPAA data that's going maybe outbound to the internet because you don't want any of that escaping. So those type of the rules are what you can do and utilize within your gateway. And all of these are predefined, but they're editable. So if you as a company, you utilize larger spreadsheet files on a regular basis, well, maybe to you a large spreadsheet file isn't 500K. Maybe we need to set the large spreadsheet file to maybe 2 meg or maybe 5 meg because you're regularly utilizing 500 KB to 200 megabytes. And that's your normal operating file size. Well, then you want to be able to edit these and then utilize them to fit your business needs. And as the gateway gets more penetrated into not just at the perimeter anymore, like we're used to seeing gateways at the perimeter and you're just blocking web traffic and that's it. And a few years ago at RSA, one of the keynote speakers, I think it was the CEO of RSA, was saying application awareness is end to end. And this was 2016, 2017. Application awareness is end to end, not just a big perimeter anymore. Now you have to watch what the application is doing throughout the inside of your network, whether it's an internal user going to HR, an internal user going to finance. You want to watch what the applications are doing even inside your network, because if someone gets compromised at one point, you don't want that compromise to go anywhere else, and you don't want data exfiltrated. And maybe the data exfiltration is happening east to west. Maybe it is a user that's an IT user gets compromised, and then that gets spread to an HR user. Now the HR user is accessing the HR server, which they have access to, but their machine is compromised. So you see this east-west traffic. Well, if you can take a gateway, like a security gateway, and put that down to your default gateway, so any layer 3 gateway within your network has the ability to look at content and is application aware, and they're able to look at layer 7, not just layer 3. Now you have a different view of your network. You have full application visibility, and you can set rules within your rule type of allowing or denying traffic that should go or shouldn't go based on your business needs. And all of that is available if you can get a gateway, and like content awareness built into the Checkpoint Gateway is part of NGTP. It's a license that's just built into the gateway. You don't need an additional license for it. It's built in. It just needs to be enabled also. So if you have a gateway today and you don't see content awareness on there, we're not going to go over it specifically, but you need to allow content awareness. You need to enable it on the gateway and then enable it on the manager so that you can push the policy, which is content aware, to the gateway. So it's just an enabling thing. So in this rule, now that we've talked a little bit about data types and how they work, so the question here is, looking at rule number 1, where the source and destination, services and applications, those 3 parts are the same, but within the content piece, so this says downloading traffic and the spreadsheets, including credit card numbers, which we saw earlier, the specific data type. We know that within there, it's an AND for the spreadsheets, including credit card data. But if we wrote it differently, so if we wrote the content type as download traffic, and then we use 2 objects instead of the one within the PCI credit card numbers and spreadsheet file, and we're dropping. So the question is, which of these rules would drop the spreadsheets with credit card data? Is it only number 1? Is it only number 2? Or would both work? And if we were in a class, I'd ask you to raise your hand so that we can all vote on it. But obviously you're watching the video, so I can't interact specifically with you. But if you thought about it by now, I'm sure you've already come up with a decision on which one would do it. So I think in our example, we pretty much explained that number 1 does do it. So then the question really is number 2, does number 2 block spreadsheets with credit card data also? And the answer is that no, it doesn't. So only number 1 would work here, because number 2, when you put in 2 content types within content, you're saying or. So PCI, so we're going to block PCI credit card numbers or spreadsheet files. So either one of those gets hit, it's getting dropped. So this is, you don't actually want to put multiple content types within your content rule. You want to create a data type object group so that it's an AND, because you don't want to accidentally just drop all spreadsheet files here when you are intending on only dropping spreadsheets with PCI credit card numbers. So that's something to watch when you're creating your rules, is don't put multiple content types within the same content group unless you're okay with a bunch of ORs. So if you have 3 here, it's any of those get hit, it's getting dropped because they get treated like an OR. And there's only number 1 would achieve your object. Number 2 would match for credit card numbers, content, or file types, spreadsheets. So remember that multiple objects within your rule is treated like an OR and not an AND. So matching for content type is part of the unified policy process. So this is something that you can allow. You just need to enable it again. It's built in by default. So this is your firewall. These are your firewall rules. This is application control. utilizing, looking into the packet and seeing which application it is. And then this is content awareness doing the content piece. So if you're looking at competitive products, some match rule based only on the application signature. After the match is done, the content is verified. With these solutions, your content control is limited to application signature matching. So what they're saying is if you look at competitive products, they're only saying only if the application matches are you allowed to look at the content. And we're looking at content and just saying we're not only matching based on application, we're looking at content more importantly, and then taking action based on content, not necessarily only on the application if the application matches. If the content matches, we can action on it. So let's look at a couple of use cases here. So planning content awareness requires a detailed planning phase. I really advocate for if you're a security group and you need to work with the network group and then work with each one of your groups within the company to see which content they use. A lot of times you're going to be doing some permit rules. I've done this before where you're application matching for companies, and I do a lot of permit rules with logging and then look at which logs it is, document as much as I can, and then go to those specific groups. I can go to HR or I can go to marketing and say, it looks like you guys are posting a lot to Facebook, you're posting to Twitter, but also you're accessing this shared site out on the internet that I don't think that that's part of a company policy. Are you guys using that? And most of the time, yes, we are using that. We just need, and since IT didn't know about it, it's not secure. So it's a interactive process and an interactive process within each group to utilize content awareness in the correct way. So you want to make sure that consider using UserCheck to educate employees. And now you're saying we can see that these users are doing these functions and they are accessing these sites or they are downloading these spreadsheets, that sort of thing. And maybe you have someone that's in marketing, but they're also helping out in a different department. They're in marketing, but they just came from HR and they still have HR functionality and they're still doing some HR functions. Well, you can look at users and you can see which users are accessing which, and maybe they don't fit fully into the marketing bucket, so you can't put them in those walls and say they can only do marketing things, because they're still helping out HR a little bit. Whenever anybody crosses those lines, it gets a little bit tricky, so then you have to make sure that you plan your rules accordingly. And it helps to create policy layers, dedicated order layers, so it's a top-down approach, so make sure when you're doing your planning that it makes sense. So the differences between content awareness and DLP. Some people tend to get the two a little confused, and I can understand why, mainly because DLP is doing the function that maybe content awareness is also doing. DLP just looks at it a lot more detail than what content awareness does. Content awareness is just looking at the content itself and taking an action on it, where DLP has to do a completely dig into each one of them. So rule-based independence, DLP is dedicated multi-rule rule-based. Content awareness is part of the first match unified rule-based. Content awareness also can be used as a dedicated layer. Content awareness supports VSX and IPv6, and also unified rule-based with application control, URL filtering, and other unified rule-based. You don't need a license specifically for content awareness. You do need the license for DLP. Content can scan both incoming and outgoing traffic and have direction granularity in each rule, so you can say the rule incoming or outgoing. And DLP supports advanced data types, templates, data at rest, fingerprinting, and then has full mail quarantine support, and also has an exchange agent scan for internal exchange communication. So DLP has more advanced engines and dedicated rule base, but works for HTTP, POST, SMTP, FTP. Content awareness works all directions and integrated into the unified rule base, meaning content awareness can look at all applications and in all directions. So what you want to keep in mind when you're working with content awareness, make sure, as we said earlier, make sure you enable it. First of all, you want to enable it on the manager and on the gateway, and then push policy so that it is enabled. And then also this rule will not create any log messages about the content because the content is just set to any. Make sure that once you enable it for usability purposes, any doesn't match any objects. You want to do any direction, any file. So the any needs to change a little bit so that you can see, now you can see here on this rule that there's no hits. And then now there's 202 hits because we're saying any direction, any file. Now we're actually logging the content, where before we weren't. We're saying just allow it through. So if HTTP traffic passes the gateway, the web page elements will be noticed as files, and you'll get dedicated log messages. So this is very important once you start working within content. Once you want to start seeing content, you want to make sure you set this to any direction, any file. And this is a good rule to put in your gateway above a lot of other rules that when you're first starting out and you have a lot of specific rules in your top-down approach, and then before you get to your general rules, maybe you want to put this in there right after the general rules just to see the impact on the gateway, and then move it up to just above your general rules. So now you can see all of the traffic and start to take more action on it with the lessening the taxing on the gateway. By enabling content awareness, you're not taxing the gateway a lot. But if I don't know where your gateway is today. So if you're already pushing the CPU between 60 and 80%, you may see a little bit of a spike and it may be traffic affecting. So you always want to keep that in mind. Do it on a lower day so that you can see the impact, or do it during a maintenance window. So that any file, content, object in combination with extended logs and files, including the JPEG used in the web page. So we're going to take a look at log details now. When you turn on content awareness and then you start logging, you're getting more in your logs now than you were before. So what exactly are you getting? Well, within the log info, you can see which blades are active. So content awareness is active, application control. You can see this, and then you'll see the file operation says the data type. So now you're seeing which type of files. So spreadsheet file. You wouldn't see this before if you didn't have the content awareness turned on, because you wouldn't be able to see which content, which files are being processed. And now you can see the file name. So within the log, you can see that they transmitted this Excel file. So if someone was to get compromised, or if there was something fishy in one of the files, and you weren't sure which file caused it, but you had a specific time that someone received a file, now you can go back to your content log details and you can see, well, now I know which file it is, and then you can look for that specific file. So also within the log details, you can see the rule number and the policy layer of the rule that got hit. So we can see where the matched rules are that this log was generated from. And then you can see the URLs that have been accessed. So if you're looking for URLs and you're looking for the URL itself to make sure that the URL has been permitted, denied, which category it's in, URL filtering does have to be turned on. But here, if you're just looking for which URLs have been accessed within content, you can get the resource, and then you can see when the get was processed and which URL it is. That's all within the same log details. It's just a different tab. And then you can see the name of the file. You can actually just go to the last one is the files, which file it is. And all that's available once you turn on content awareness with the file, with file tracking, with logging. Okay, so supported file types and content types. There is an SK here, 114640, that goes into a lot more detail about content awareness and which file and content types are available. You can see, so when they talk about file types and it says it's a zip, what are the common extensions? Here, like the executable, there's a lot of extensions here that you can look at to see which ones are summarized to an executable file type. And we're going to go over an example of how you can create your own custom ones too. But content types, again, some examples: PCI, HIPAA, CAD. Detecting content types requires inspecting the file until the end. So also, if you're doing in your rules, the little bit of a performance hit on your gateway that I was talking about earlier, when we look at content type, we are looking at the file all the way to the end to determine which content type it is. So if it's just file type, if we're just looking at a zip file, I don't need to look very far into the file to see that it's a zip file. But if I'm looking for content, which HIPAA data, CAD data, PCI, I need to look all the way. I need to inspect the file all the way to the end to be able to determine those. So you also, if you're blocking file types and content types, block your files first so that your content types have less to analyze later, because that's the impact on the gateway that will be felt more, because content types have to look at more data than file types do. You want to have your content type rules below file type rules in order to achieve a high performance. There you go. So if you wanted to create your own, you can look at an example of media and images, and then you can say, if I wanted to create my own specific data types within RID10 content awareness, you can go to SK114935, and this will help you create your own. If you wanted to see an example of of how it works, you can look at like media and images, and then you can see related file types here. So JPEGs, GIFs, all of these file types in here, MP3s, MPEGs, that all counts under media and images. So when you're going to utilize one of the pre-built file types and utilize the file attributes, and you're going to block on those, these are all of the files that will be blocked. And data types are updated from the cloud utilizing the same process as the application control. So if you go into application control and URL filtering, you can see the security gateway updates are set to every 2 hours. So something to keep in mind when you're blocking based on content type, and you want to make sure that this is just a normal update. But if you're going to do an update, an upgrade, we're talking about R8010 today. That's as our software version. But if you're going to upgrade to R8020 or R8030, you want to, and you're blocking based on content type, you want to make sure that things like content types for something specific don't change. Like, I don't know, just for an example, if media and images has MPEGs, which are videos, and then JPEGs together, and then there's an update and they want to break those out and they want to have a pictures one and a video one separate, then you want to make sure that you pay attention to the upgrade software to see if content types have been changed. I don't anticipate that that would happen, but it's just something to know and to keep in mind. And then to enable the blade on the gateway, you need to enable it on the gateway and on the policy. So on the gateway itself, content awareness is right in the center. You would check there on the gateway properties, and VSX gateways are supported. And then within the policy layer properties on the manager, you would go to layer editor and you would do a checkbox for content awareness, and then you would push the policy. So again, this was meant for it to be a summary for content awareness with an overview of how it would work, how it would be implemented, give you more familiar with content types, file types, so that you can have a good idea of how to implement them. It's definitely worth it to give you more visibility on what your users are doing and what traffic is traversing your network. So matching for content awareness is part of the unified rule-based matching process. Content awareness is a building block for business-aware security policy, and ordered and inline layers are allowing to cover complex use cases. And predefined content types can be used as they are even grouped to achieve specific scenarios. You can group the predefined content types with content types and file types together to make that data group type object. That's something that you definitely want to do within your own environment. Create those so that you know specifically what you're using it for. So I hope that this video was impactful and helpful for you, and this gives you a better overview specifically of content awareness and how it can help you in your environment. And have a great day.